Well, welcome everyone. I'm excited to have this chat today with Igor. He and I are going to talk to you about, the theme of our fireside chat is old challenges, new solutions, better results. And for myself here in the North American market, I support our channel accounts here at SAS. I'm excited to be on this fireside chat with Igor today. I have more than 30 years of retail experience and over 5 years of technology experience with SAS and the data and AI space. So I'm excited to be chatting with Igor today because I've known Algomine through most of my journey here at SAS. We've worked on a lot of joint clients together in the European market, and I'm really pumped that Algomine's now supporting clients here in the US and Canada. So, very excited, Igor, to be talking to you today. Why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Thanks, Michael, and thanks for having me. I'm the head of AI and ML at Algomine. We've been a partner for SAS for a number of years. We're focusing on implementing analytics a solution especially in retail, but also in distribution and frankly, anywhere it takes us.
Yeah, great, great. Thanks for that. So, our first subject area, we're going to focus on obviously data, right? Data is always it's always the part of the project, right? That's most challenging. And despite all our advancements in technology and all the cloud uh, availability of everything getting into places where we can find it. We still find, as recently as just a few weeks ago, I was talking to a research firm, and this is still the number one challenge for almost every organization, not just retail. So, and that comes in the form of the right amount of data, the availability of that data, its quality, and the ability to really bring it in and harvest it. And now we have new promises from AI, Gen AI, with being able to even take PDFs, right, and harvest that data and leverage the unstructured nature of that for automation. So, with all of these advancements, in your experience, Igor, why do you think companies still struggle with this subject area and being able to really leverage and harvest the power of data?
Yeah, let me start by saying that those problems are definitely not new, but I think their specifics evolve over time. The primary challenges that the companies face stem from the fact that they still have those legacy systems. You tend to be siloed, they tend to be incompatible with any modern platforms. And the reason behind this is because data integration, as probably many people know, can be an expensive and a complicated task. It might require significant investment in infrastructure and licenses, and it will take time. So, in my experience, I see organizations sometimes looking over it or postponing it even indefinitely and continue to using those legacy systems as it's a big hurdle to get over. And are actually some of the challenges with data that we're seeing today, such as you mentioned, unstructured data, online data, or something that's probably more pronounced in European Union, so privacy issues. This actually builds on all those traditional challenges, and they actually can get worse. So, I think one thing to keep in mind is that all of those issues, unattended, will affect in the long term will affect both your operations and planning as well as any analytics you might want to implement.
Yeah, yeah, great point, right? So that's what's going through the minds of a lot of these retailers, right? When is my data ready? I actually had an opportunity to chat with a retail organization here in the U.S. last year, and this particular company had an initiative to really get all of its data moved to the cloud within a 2 year period. But what I found very interesting about that one, I thought that was a really powerful and a very strategic approach. The other thing I found pretty interesting is the the way which they set about to do this, and they picked it. They basically decided they're going to take it subject area by subject area. So you mentioned some of those legacy systems. Sometimes it kind of contains the systems that are supporting that part of the organization. And so, for example, you could start with your HR data, or you could start with your customer data, or you could start with your supply chain and inventory data. So, really tackling a particular portion of the organization a step at a time, I think, can be a very smart way for companies to set about to really understand and maximize what they can get with analytics out of their data. Um, so, in your experience, how can companies? What are some other approaches to really let that data shine and achieve some quick wins in the area of automation or in data optimization and on their journey they may be just beginning?
Yeah, I think you made a very valid point that data integration being such a big, complicated task is much easier to tackle when you split it into smaller sub problems, right? So, as the saying goes, the only way to eat an elephant is to take one small bite at a time. And it rings true in this case. I think the approach that you mentioned, starting small, I would also add using probably cloud based computation services so that you can really start with something small, but then you can scale up as you go along. So you don't have to move it from something smaller into, progressing into a larger infrastructure. In order to maybe lower the entry cost that you usually have, I would suggest starting with open source solutions. And then later, once you prove the value of this integration project, go into some more advanced licensed solutions. I think that an approach that I would suggest is find something that is repetitive, something that you can automate to make everyday tasks easier, and put those data quality checks or those data governance regulations in place so that you can really showcase the difference you're going to make once you provide users with very up to date, very correct data. And another thing, if you do it in a user-friendly way, so if you invest in some kind of dashboard so that the employees and managers can really make sense of the data, visualize the data, you're really going to make a much easier job for them to get on board with this change, and maybe even much easier to get support from the board or get financing reserved for such a move. So um, I think, yeah, the biggest thing is to start small but think big.
Yeah, great points, Igor. So why don't we switch gears here and let's focus on just what's going on in the world today, right? We continue to have a lot of economic pressures out there, and certainly no shortage of disruptions, around the world with lots of geopolitical things continuing. Inflation still quite high, although finally some break in interest rates here in the U.S. So looking forward to we've seen some recent trends, but prices are still quite high, and the competition's probably never been higher. So, with all these rising costs and trying to really make sure that we don't sacrifice qualities, Igor, what do you think retailers can do in that balance of cutting cost while at the same time maintaining quality with all these increasing demands from customers?
Mhm. Yeah, I think maintaining quality is really an important point you make, because in the information age we live in, it's not a long-term viable strategy, right? To cut corners on quality, because the news will get around very fast. I think one of the ways that retailers or any organizations can look for savings while maintaining quality is to focus on smarter, more data-driven decision making. So you could think implementing solutions like predictive modeling to really be able to forecast your demand accurately. You can think about inventory management to optimize your level of the stocks, or maybe even workforce management and automation that will lower those overhead costs and those labor costs that you have, so that In this way, you don't have to sacrifice the quality, but you can reduce some of the costs that you are facing. And I think automation is a great example in this regard, because not only will it reduce the labor cost that is generally can be quite high, but I think it also allows your specialists to move into more advanced, more creative tasks. So it can actually translate to better quality for the customer.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent points, Igor. You mentioned demand forecasting, and it still becomes it's always in your top 4 to 5 priorities for any organization, technology wise. There's been obviously a shift from, although we still find the empty shelves occasionally, as with disasters and things like that, but for the most part. Most retailers today are really focused on trying to manage that balance sheet and really get those inventories down to a lean level, just so that they have more capital to work with. So excellent point there. So Igor, so what strategies do you think retailers can adopt to help them compete on price and what will continue to be certainly a challenging balance of the year and certainly into next year? With continuing to try to manage their demand, yet be able to compete effectively.
Hmm. Yeah, so in a difficult economy like today, price will continue to be the number one factor. But again, I think in the today's economy, people also concentrate on the customer experience, and I think this is somewhere that the retailers can really differentiate from their competition. One of the ways to do it is to really personalize the experience. So think loyalty programs, think personalized marketing, maybe even personalized pricing if you can get there. All of those obviously require good quality customer data. So you really need to look into what data you're currently collecting and where you want to go, and implementing some customer analytics. But I think the potential benefits of really getting this personal touch with a customer are substantial. They can really make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's one of my favorite, I think, wins that we've in this area of personalization that I think Gen AI really holds a lot of promise. We see a few retailers already adopting that with their customers. So I think you're right. Right, we can manage that demand, and we can still entice our customers to differentiate ourselves from our competition. So great point. So let's pivot to a new subject area. So I think when we're talking about data and the challenges with data, we talked about how we could leverage. We can, in many cases, once we've tackled that, we can drive efficiency within the organization. Um, I think we know this, right? A lot of leaders in the retail space understand that lots of things can be automated within the organization. I think you alluded to in the prior subject area that if we can free up us, our associates to be able to spend more time in those creative tasks, and with the promise of, for example, forecasting can bring or price optimization can bring, um, that certainly holds a lot of promise. However, many leaders are still reluctant to make the investment, right? And they want to double, triple check the ROI that they could expect for various projects. Um, so, in your experience with all your conversations, what do you think is holding those decision makers back in making in the end the investment they absolutely know they need to make to remain competitive and help make their organizations more efficient?
The factor you mentioned, so the ROI that's maybe difficult to estimate in advance, something that's not very immediate as well, is definitely one of the factors, especially when revenue becomes uncertain. It's not a moment where you can approach the board and say, this is how much money we're going to spend, but we don't know just yet how much it's going to make us. But I think what's more is that for many people, analytics still seem like something very expensive. And historically it's been true, right? You had to invest in your own infrastructure, licenses. You had to hire specialists to maintain this infrastructure, and then data scientists to make sense of the data. And recent developments have actually brought this cost of entry uh, down quite a bit. If you look into how fast you can set up an analytics environment using cloud-based solutions, basically just with a credit card, right? You don't really need much upfront investment. You don't need any specialist to do it with, because it all set up and automatically. Then you can start off with using some open source packages to just see and experiment with data before you actually commit into anything bigger. I think that's something that has definitely changed. It's still yet to change with people perspective, that analytic is not this big investment every single time. It can be, obviously, and in the long run, you probably are going to end up investing in more infrastructure and more bigger teams, but not necessarily at the beginning. And the other thing that I see is that this, let's say, enthusiasm for analytics or readiness for analytics is actually very industry specific. There are certain clients, for example, banking, that have been using analytics solutions for so long, it's almost like embedded into their DNA. It's difficult to difficult to imagine modern banking without machine learning, without econometrics, without statistics. And for me, working a lot of times with retailers, especially smaller to medium firms, I see that they don't have this analytics journey behind them. They're still setting off. That makes them a little bit hesitant about how to approach this. What are the correct ways to set up the environment, to start up the teams? And I think this also attributes to the fact that they can be sometimes a little bit skeptical about the quality of the results, about, for example, accuracy of their predictive models, whether they will really outperform their traditional decision-making processes. And to be honest, in retail, especially you can see it in retail, there are many people who spend their whole careers there and they're really experts in their fields. And um, it might be difficult to transfer all of this knowledge into analytics solutions, but it doesn't mean that you cannot supplement this expertise with something that is automated, with something that is data based, and just benefit from both sources of knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. In my experience, I spent many years with the department store here in the U.S. and you know, a little larger firm, but at the same time, even though small and medium businesses can adopt that kind of center of excellence approach, where um, if you're not hiring data scientists, generally are those folks that work with demand or work with customer or marketing data can generally kind of pull together, right? So that they can kind of feed off each other as far as learning these new technologies. Of course, a lot of the technologies, Igor, that you and I use aren't. You don't have to be a coder. A lot of drag and drop. Certainly, a lot that we could even discover just through visualizations and mining to answer that next level question down. And to your point, that does not have to be a massive investment up front, especially given that we can take these cloud technologies and be smart with what we're doing. Right, as far as managing the cloud cost associated with all of this. So, I think some great conversation here, and trying to get our CEOs and CFOs to want to make that investment in an analytics and an AI journey. So, just kind of, I think where my favorite part of any conversation is when I get FaceTime with the customer. And that could be, maybe it's the retailer and me having spent, over 30 years in the industry, but I get to be sometimes retailer for a day or two. And sometimes we get to be retailers for months, right? In some cases, years, right? Depending on our connection with the customer, the value that we're adding for our retailers as they begin to embrace technology, whether that be in the form of analytics or optimization. A lot of these wins can really pay off, and I know that you have a couple of stories that we're going to talk about now. And that first one started many years ago, but it's resulted in, I think you said, some big savings that you'll talk about. But this happened to be an automotive parts retailer there in Europe, correct?
Yes, exactly. So it's actually one of the largest, if not the largest spare parts distributor in our region. And I think their story is a great example of how you can implement this analytics journey by starting with something that there is a very urgent need to solve, and moving on and building on top of that incrementally. Because what they did is they started by implementing a demand forecasting system because they wanted to understand their customer better, because they wanted to really to become less reactive and more adapt to how the market is changing. And once they realized that they can really well predict with great accuracy what is going to be sold and where, they decided the next step will be to optimize and adjust stocks to this demand. And finally, they even went further to automate all of these processes so that now when orders are sent to manufacturers, there is actually very little manual oversight. Everything is going smoothly automated. And I think it is a great story because if you were thinking at the very beginning where we're going to get eventually and where to plan out all of this journey and all of those results and all of those subsystems, it would probably be very daunting. I mean, you would get overwhelmed trying to, assign budgeting and try to write how long it's going to take. But here, they started with something that they saw the need for, and once the results got in, they moved forward. Going on, they only moved forward when they saw the need for change or potential to solve some problem. So I think it's a great story of how you should treat analytics. Don't think of, oh, this is a huge change that I'm going to implement straight away, but kind of experiment and see what's working, what's not working. And especially right now, when we have those cloud-based solutions and open source tools where you can really test something out on a small scale and build a business case around it. And then once you have this, you can move forward.
Yeah.
It's also, I think, a very interesting case in terms of how you can really tailor analytics to your needs. Automotive is a very specific industry in the way that it usually has very long lead times, quite high product prices, and majority of SKUs will sell very, very little. Right, with the number of makes and marks of the cars you have, a single SKU can be sold once a month, once every 2 months, or something like this. So what I mean here is that this is an industry where intermittent demand is actually a big problem, and traditional forecasting methods are generally performing rather poorly when you are faced with such irregular demand. So what we did here for this company is actually we developed an innovative method for forecasting intermittent demand that really allowed them to monitor those demand signals across their networks and then trying to copy this to the places where the sales occur very rarely.
Well, great. I like the theme that you have there, right? And what I like to call a more touchless process, right? So you're right. As I think just in the middle of this is certainly as this retailer has adopted the optimization, the analytics, and now is letting orders just automatically be generated. That's what we're all striving for. But it does require, I think, change management and a understanding that adoption is never 100% in year one, right? It might only be 50%, but even that 50% can yield a lot of value. And then as we grow in and people begin to trust, we can pick up another maybe 75, 80% in year two. And then by the third year, we're really maximizing value. And I think back to one of my clients here in the US, that similar sort of thing in fashion apparel. A lot of diversity of product in those stores, making sure that you've got the right balance of women's products, women's tops, bottoms, and those sort of things. And so, similar story for me here in the US. That particular apparel company has been able to get to a 96% auto release of their fashion allocation, which is just honestly unheard of in all of my years in retails. But they did that by really, as your client, continuing to kind of tweak, make changes, work with the the allocators to make sure that whatever was not quite right was adjusted in the models, and then eventually those allocators were actually able to work on other much higher value tasks, right, and not spend all their time, manually kind of looking through those distributions. So I think two awesome stories there. Um, maybe we'll finish on just one more use case. So I know that we both mentioned, right, pricing continuing to be such an important factor in our demand. I know you've got an electronics retailer where you did some work with specifically trying to make sure that our demand models understood the price elasticity and the impact on demand. You want to talk a little about this last particular customer?
Sure. Yeah. So when pricing, one of the most obvious approaches is try to implement a price elasticity model where you can monitor how your sales and your customer is going to react when you switch the price. However, in a industry that is very price competitive, it's not enough to just look at the relationship between sales and prices, because you are living in an environment, right, where your competitors are also switching their prices constantly. Everyone is trying to be, the number one offer or on a marketplace or on a search engine that compares all the prices. So what we did for them was we actually created a forecasting model that created predictions of sales for different price points. So as a product manager, you can imagine you have your product that you're going on the market with, and you can see how the forecasts look depending on the price that you set it. So they could tweak the price, see if they went 10% more, 10% less, how it would affect the sales given also the prices of their competitors at the moment. So as you can imagine, this is a very powerful insight in setting pricing strategies and purchasing, because you can tell what the sales potential is at different price points. Therefore, you can see how your profits and your final your how a turnover is going to be once you decide on a certain strategy.
Great. Well, Igor, I've really enjoyed our conversation, and our chat today. I look forward to working with you here in North America. I think that all the incredible insights I've seen from Algomine over the years are going to be really. I think the U.S. And Canadian customer base here was really going to benefit from the vast talent that your organization brings. So I'm excited that you're a partner here, and look forward to working with you. And I can't wait to work on a U.S. or Canadian client here together. So I appreciate your time today. Um, you know, I. I think both of our LinkedIn QR codes are going to be available if you'd like to chat with me or if you'd like to chat with Igor. Igor, anything that you would like to help us close out with in what we've covered today?
Well, let me just finish by saying that thank you very much for having me. I'm really excited to working with SaaS clients in America and Canada as well. If any of our people listening us would like to learn more about some of the cases they mentioned, you can visit our webpage at algomine.ai. And there's a number of business cases that we already implemented for clients in retail and other industries as well.
Well, great, great. So, Igor, thank you so much. Until next time, I think that we'll call that a wrap. Thank you so much.
Thank you.